YouTube, hello, my name is Natalie, and in this video, I'll talk you through how I edited this semi-portrait. It's more of an eye piece, and right off I can identify that this color theme I went for is borderline zombie, but it works for me, and I'm quite happy with it, because I have up until recently been quite afraid to go more bold than I already have been with my colors, and this one kind of pushes clarity to the point of distaste, and it might be too much for many people as it is, but like I said, I'm very happy with this edit. The shadows and the overall dramatic effect, the clarity and the color. But if you're into it, I retraced my editing steps and I wrote them down, and I repeated what I did for this tutorial. So here we have our raw image in the Camera Raw editor, and what I tend to do a bit lately for kicks is I kind of mess with the calibration, and almost immediately I'll take my primary blues towards the cyan. But I tend to be very careful with doing this when I have a skin tone heavy image, because this affects skin tones more notably, and this is because our eyes can tell some things unintentionally off with skin tone editing, even if we don't actively know what it is that we're seeing. So I'm always careful with calibration when skin tones are involved, and that is especially so with this one, because this entire image is skin tone. Back to our general editing, I want this to feel intense, so let's take the temperature down a bit, bring up the shadows, which is what I tend to do when going dramatic. Up with the shadows to make it easier to get this to pop when we add some contrast and some clarity. The shadows up isn't what I'd necessarily always recommend. Same as with the next step, which was down with the highlights. Now, when we go up with shadows and down with highlights in a nicely exposed image, we're treading on HDR territory. So do be aware of that. And another tool to manage with caution is clarity. So let's bring that up and up. Note how I'm using the clarity to add a punch, and I can do this because there is no region within this image that is overexposed. Now let's take the skin saturation down to have the eye blue stand out. Grab the radial filter with a nice healthy feather and set it to affect the outside, and let's clear the previous filter settings. Radial filter over the eyes, get it just on the inside, and down with the exposure, and down with the shadows, and up with the highlights to reintroduce some of the contrast we lost when we did the opposite to the entire image at the beginning. More clarity, a touch of dehaze, and down with the saturation. And as you can tell with these steps, I'm taking all my editing is kind of touch and go and experimentation, which I highly recommend you do. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Right, let's click out of the radial filter and add some texture to the eyebrows and the eyelashes and to the eye lining. Brush tool, nice feather as well. Note that this part of the eyebrow is out of focus due to the wide aperture we shot at. So I don't want to add texture to this, and I want to keep this soft. So don't touch that. And see, the previous brush settings are still here. Reset that. Up with the sharpness, which I should have left out of this step. And it probably would have been better practice to make the feather softer on this brush. Up with the texture, and see how this adds a touch of white, so let's compensate for this by taking the highlights down a notch. Now, to reiterate, I would have preferred leaving the sharpness step out of this brush, and in all honesty, it was an accident during the recording, and I tend to record things once and deal with the consequences, so I am sorry about that. So I tend to stay away from sharpness, and I prefer adding texture. Okay, and let's just take the saturation up for the eye by upping the saturation of the entire image and compensating the skin with the radial filter. We can take it back down a touch. And this rim here isn't an editing error, it's her contact lens. And that's the bulk of it. In Photoshop, you can add your own touch, whether you have your own Photoshop touch-ups or your actions that you standardly apply, that's totally up to you. I'll add my punch, which I do automatically with my own actions, which I have covered in more detail. If you'd like to learn how to manually add these, I have 2 videos linked down below if that's something you might be interested in. There's our punch. Depending on the final image, I sometimes delete the second actioned layer, but for this one, it's added a lovely contrast, so it's gonna stay. Now, usually I remove the added sharpness that I've applied here, the skin tones, but for this edit, the sharpness works, so I'll be keeping that. And because I can't help myself, let's stamp this and work on the duplication. Alt-Shift-Control-N for a new layer, and Alt-Shift-Control-E for a stamped copy of everything below. So if I make any mistakes, it's only applied to this layer, and hue and saturation adjustment layer, clip to this layer, so the adjustments only apply to this layer, making sure we're clicked on this adjustment layer. And now that we've taken the saturation down, because I can't make up my goddamn mind, I want to exclude the eye from the desaturation. So hit B to select the brush tool, and make sure the foreground is set to black, meaning I'll use it to make kind of an erase mask. So you can click on it to set the foreground color, and if the foreground is white with a black background, you can hit X to switch that up. Put a brush hit on the eye, and now you have a masked out eye region from the adjustment layer. So any additional saturation or hue adjustments you make will apply to everywhere except that masked out erased region. I have other videos that explore the brush mask as a tool, and I'll link those below if that's something that you might be interested in. I don't think that this color theme here would have worked if it had been a photo of her entire face. I don't know. I think she would have ended up looking a little not alive, the undead. So do keep that in mind if you decide to try this edit out for yourself. If you do go for it, feel free to put it up and tag me on Instagram. Let's see what you come up with, and let's leave it there. That's it for today, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you found this video helpful, useful, entertaining, if you feel that you may have learned something, feel free to let me know down below, whether it's to say hello or what's up. It's all very welcome. Don't forget to keep taking photos, keep making videos, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.